Am I the only one that didn't know over 120,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly relocated and incarcerated during World War II? December 7th, 1941, a date etched in the memory of every American. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a devastating blow, a sucker punch that plunged the United States into the heart of World War II. The images of burning ships and fallen soldiers sent shockwaves across the nation, igniting a firestorm of fear, anger, and an insatiable thirst for vengeance. The attack shattered the illusion of American isolationism, forcing the country to confront the harsh realities of a global conflict. But the aftermath of the attack brought with it a different kind of devastation, a slow-burning poison that would tarnish the very ideals America claimed to defend. In the wake of Pearl Harbor, fear became the order of the day, and in the shadows of that fear, suspicion took root, twisting into prejudice and ultimately blossoming into one of the darkest chapters in American history, the internment of Japanese Americans. Welcome, viewers, to the channel Enchanting Lore. Exposing the fear in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor, the rallying cry echoed across the nation, a potent cocktail of patriotism and simmering resentment. The attack on Pearl Harbor wasn't just a military strike, it was a psychological one. It planted seeds of doubt and suspicion, particularly towards Japanese Americans. Rumors swirled, fueled by fear and paranoia. Whispers of sabotage, espionage, and a hidden fifth column of Japanese Americans secretly loyal to Japan spread like wildfire. These whispers found fertile ground in the hearts of those already harboring prejudices against immigrants, particularly those of Asian descent. Politicians and media outlets, some driven by genuine fear, others by opportunism, fanned the flames of suspicion, painting all Japanese Americans with the broad brush of disloyalty. In the court of public opinion, fueled by fear and innuendo, Japanese Americans were already being tried and convicted without a shred of evidence. What's something people don't know about Executive Order 9066? Fueled by this toxic brew of fear and prejudice, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 on February 19, 1942.
This seemingly innocuous document, granting the military broad authority to define military areas from which any or all persons may be excluded, would have devastating consequences for Japanese Americans.
With the stroke of a pen, President Roosevelt unleashed a wave of fear and uncertainty that would uproot the lives of over 120,000 men, women, and children. The order itself didn't specifically target Japanese Americans, but the writing was on the wall. The order was quickly weaponized against anyone deemed a potential threat based solely on their ancestry. Japanese Americans, most of whom were American citizens, were stripped of their rights, their homes, and their dignity, branded as enemies within their own country. One of the most infamous internment camps was the Manzanar War Relocation Center located in California. At Manzanar, Japanese Americans faced harsh living conditions with families crammed into small barracks and enduring extreme weather. Despite these hardships, the internees tried to maintain a sense of community and normalcy, creating schools, farms, and even sports leagues within the camp. Imagine this. You are forced to leave your home, your job, your life with only what you can carry. You're herded onto trains, treated like criminals, and shipped off to the middle of nowhere. Your destination? An internment camp, a euphemism for a prison camp surrounded by barbed wire, guard towers, and armed soldiers. This was the reality for thousands of Japanese Americans. Their lives in the camp were harsh and unforgiving. Families were crammed into cramped, hastily constructed barracks offering little privacy or comfort. Food was scarce and often barely edible. The psychological toll was immeasurable. The constant surveillance, the loss of freedom, the ever-present feeling of being unwanted and mistrusted in your own country. It left an unerasable scar on the souls of those imprisoned. The constant surveillance, the loss of freedom, the ever-present feeling of being unwanted and mistrusted in your own country, it left an indelible scar on the souls of those imprisoned. This is gonna blow your mind. Behind-the-wire stories of resilience and loss. Despite the hardships, the internees tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Schools were set up, often staffed by the internees themselves. People found ways to celebrate their culture, holding traditional dances and festivals. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, a quiet rage simmered. The injustice of it all, the blatant violation of their rights, was a bitter pill to swallow. Stories of individual resilience are interwoven with heartbreaking tales of loss. Businesses built over a lifetime were lost, homes and belongings left behind. The emotional toll was immense, leaving behind a legacy of trauma passed down through generations. A nation divided, the fight for justice begins. Even as the nation rallied against tyranny abroad, a battle for justice was brewing at home. While many Americans remained silent, either unaware of the internment camps or swayed by wartime propaganda, others recognized the injustice unfolding before their eyes. Civil rights groups and religious organizations spoke out against the unconstitutional nature of the internment, condemning it as a violation of basic human rights. Newspapers and magazines, though initially hesitant, began to publish articles and editorials questioning the morality and legality of the internment. The fight for justice was an uphill battle, met with resistance and apathy. But the seeds of doubt had been sown, and the fight for redress had begun. I don't think people understand the true impact of Korematsu versus the United States, a stain on the American conscience. In 1944, Fred Korematsu, a young Japanese-American man who had refused to comply with the internment order, had his case heard by the Supreme Court. Korematsu's case became a pivotal moment in the fight against the internment. The Supreme Court, in a deeply flawed and controversial decision, upheld the government's right to intern Japanese Americans, citing national security as justification. This decision, a stain on the American conscience, set a dangerous precedent, essentially legitimizing racial discrimination in the name of national security.
The Korematsu decision remains a chilling reminder of how fear and prejudice can warp even the most fundamental principles of justice and equality.
Not many know to this day the full extent of the injustice faced by Japanese Americans during World War II, a long overdue apology acknowledging a grave injustice. For decades, the internment of Japanese Americans remained a dark chapter in American history, often glossed over or ignored entirely. But the fight for justice never truly ended. Japanese Americans, along with civil rights activists and scholars, continued to push for recognition of the injustices they had suffered. Finally, in 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, formally apologizing for the internment and offering reparations to surviving internees. The apology, though long overdue, was a significant step towards acknowledging and atoning for a grave injustice. It was a recognition that the internment was not a military necessity, but rather a product of fear, prejudice, and a failure of leadership. The legacy of internment, a wound that never truly heals. The internment of Japanese Americans left an ineradicable mark on American history. It stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of civil liberties in the face of fear and prejudice. The physical scars of the camps have faded, but the emotional and psychological wounds run deep, passed down through generations. The legacy of internment is a complex one. It's a story of resilience and resistance, of families torn apart and lives upended. It's a story of a community's fight for justice and recognition, a fight that continues to this day. The internment serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that we must remain vigilant in defending our rights and the rights of others. The pain of those days still lingers, but we continue to fight for justice so that future generations won't suffer the same fate. Never again, a call to vigilance. Never again. These two words carry the weight of history, a solemn promise to remember and to resist the forces of fear and prejudice. But remembering is not enough. We must actively challenge discrimination in all its forms and hold our leaders accountable for upholding the rights of all citizens. The internment of Japanese Americans stands as a stark reminder that freedom is a fragile thing, easily sacrificed at the altar of fear. It's a reminder that we must remain vigilant, ever ready to defend the rights of all, regardless of race, religion, or national origin. Only then can we truly say never again. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below to join the conversation and help spread awareness.